Welcome to the Jeremiah Patterson Show, and thank you for joining me today. It is good to be back. I've been working on a lot of things behind the scenes, including the highly anticipated Resistance podcast that's officially going to be out next week, launching the first episode to paid subscribers, as well as our report on Israel and Iran that's going to be released tomorrow, as well as a whole bunch of new content that I've been working on behind the scenes for months and for weeks. Finally excited to bring that to you all to view. But while I've been working on other projects, the news has not slowed down. Today we got an avalanche of rulings from the Supreme Court, many of which sent shockwaves throughout the country, and I believe for good reason because of what happened today. The first ruling we got from the Supreme Court was on the birthright citizenship case. Trump signed an executive order seeking to get rid of it, implying that this order did not apply to immigrants, essentially saying that this specific part of the U.S. Constitution only applied to slaves. And so Donald Trump says that anyone that comes to the United States and has children in this country, basically, they are actually not citizens, which of course is against what the 14th Amendment says, but Donald Trump is saying that anyway. He wants to do this, basically, so he can deport anyone he wants. And not only was this executive order struck down multiple times by other judges, but he was also sued over this. The other thing, though, is that this executive order does not just, want to get rid of birthright citizenship. It also limits the power of judges on nationwide injunctions. As you may know, the Trump administration is in their vast campaign of illegal and unconstitutional actions, suffering an amalgamation of defeats in courts. They have consistently defied the courts and gone after them, saying that essentially we are dealing with activist judges abusing the rule of law. In the latest attack on the judiciary yesterday, the Department of Justice, under Pam Bondi's leadership, sued the entire bench of Maryland judges over restricting deportations. They were irate because this order bars the government from deporting undocumented immigrants for at least a day after they filed a legal challenge, which could result in them staying. God forbid we want to give people due process in this country. Attorney General Pam Bondi justified this lawsuit by saying that the court's immigration ruling was, quote, unlawful judicial overreach. It should be noted that this is the same federal court in which Judge Paula Exenis resides. She will be the judge overseeing Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case, who the government deported against the ruling of a federal judge back in March. He has since been returned to the United States, but now apparently is going to go into ICE custody. And they're actively trying to just ignore this trial and deport him again. So there are a lot of moving parts around that specific story here. But it also, in the broader context, is consistent with the Trump administration's desire to run rampant, basically, to have control and to do whatever they want, where they don't have to listen to the courts. Earlier this week, a whistleblower exposed that top officials at the Department of Justice crafted a plan to defy the courts, including the gentleman pictured here on your screen, Emile Beauvais, Trump's former personal attorney, who he has just appointed to a lifetime federal judge seat. According to this whistleblower, Beauvais stated that DOJ would need to consider telling the court, quote, F you, and ignore any such court order. So consider telling the courts to F off because we're not going to listen to what you say. According to reporting, that was followed by pervasive silence in the room. Again, he has just been nominated by the President of the United States for a lifetime appointment as a federal judge, and he just said F the courts. So the same guy that thinks the courts should F off is about to be a federal judge for life. Only in the Trump administration. So this is what this administration has been trying to do for months, ever since they have stepped into office. I mean, the first time that we got a judge audibly saying, hey, this administration is not adhering to things that I'm saying. The first time we got that was back in February. Remember, it was a major moment at the time. Constitutional crisis. We are well beyond that at this point. We have fully dropped into authoritarianism as the Trump administration is just flat out refusing to do anything here. I mean, they do not want to listen to the courts. They would rather much prefer that this not be something that they have to do. And, you know, it remains consistently clear in their messaging. You know, their overt disdain and brazen disrespect for the rule of law in this country as well. They don't like that nationwide injunctions are a thing because it restricts them from doing what they really want to do, including the most vile and barbaric part of their agenda. But after today's ruling by the Supreme Court, they won't have to worry about that anymore. While the High Court did not make a decision on birthright citizenship, they did in fact side with the Trump administration and restricted lower courts' ability to restrict Trump's executive orders and actions. Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote blistering dissents. This is from Justice Sotomayor. Quote, "No right is safe in this new legal regime the court creates. Today, the threat is birthright citizenship. Tomorrow, a different administration may try to seize firearms from law-abiding citizens or prevent people of certain faiths from gathering to worship. Suppose an executive order barred women from receiving unemployment benefits or black citizens from voting. Is the government irreparably harmed and entitled to emergency relief by district court universally enjoining such policies? The majority apparently would say yes. With the stroke of a pen, the president has made a solemn mockery of our Constitution. Rather than stand firm, the court gives it away. Because such complicity should know no place in our system of law, I dissent." End quote. So that is Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor dissenting in this case here. That is quite blistering. That is very despondent, but also very true here. I mean, what the Supreme Court has just done today is say, hey, you know, nationwide injunctions was a thing to curtail presidential power, to control the way that the executive, basically to stop the executive branch from being too powerful, from becoming too powerful, from doing things that are overtly unconstitutional and illegal. If you don't have judges to stop that anymore, well then, basically that's a sign to the president that he can do whatever he wants. And he has taken that. He said that he is going to be moving swiftly to try to do some of those things again that the other judges were blocking. So congratulations, U.S. Supreme Court. You just handed Donald Trump a huge win to do whatever he wants, including if things are unconstitutional or illegal, because there won't be any federal judges anymore or lower court judges to stop him from doing it. This is Justice Jackson. This is her dissent. She essentially begins with saying that she agrees with everything that Justice Sonia Sotomayor says and calls this ruling, quote, an existential threat to the rule of law. She said that Trump's request to end universal injunctions, quote, is at bottom a request for this court's permission to engage in unlawful behavior and to continue doing something that a court had determined violates the Constitution. By doing this, the court has given Trump the ability to act like a monarch, giving, quote, the executive the go-ahead to sometimes wield the kind of unchecked arbitrary power the founders crafted our Constitution to eradicate. Today's ruling allows the executive to deny people rights that the founders plainly wrote into our Constitution so long as those individuals have not found a lawyer or asked a court in a particular manner to have their rights protected. It requires judges to shrug and turn their backs to intermittent lawlessness. The court's decision marks a sad day for America, requiring judges faced with Trump's lawlessness to look the other way and permit unlawful conduct to continue unabated. Perhaps the degradation of our rule of law regime would happen anyway, but this court's complicity in the creation of a culture of disdain for lower courts, their rulings, and the law as they interpret it will surely hasten the downfall of our governing institutions, enabling our collective demise. So once again, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and Sonia Sotomayor ringing the alarms here in this major moment for us as a country. in terms of what this means. Nationwide injunctions were put in place for a reason. That has now been limited by the U.S. Supreme Court. What we have watched today is that the conservative majority has given Donald Trump a win. And so he said today that he is going to move to push those cases that he was trying to do again, to push those executive orders that were ruled unconstitutional and illegal by other judges. He's going to try to push those back out again. Because, of course, this is the same Supreme Court that gave Donald Trump the broad immunity ruling last summer. Remember that broad immunity ruling? Where the Supreme Court basically said that Donald Trump could do whatever he wants. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, in her dissent, in her blistering dissent, even back then, warned that something like this could happen. Warned that, what was going to happen as a result of the Supreme Court basically enabling a wannabe dictator was going to result in an administration this lawless. An administration that has this brazen disregard for the rule of law. The Trump presidency is not only the enactment of Project 2025, it is also the enabling of this Supreme Court. The conservative majority on the Supreme Court last year basically gave Donald Trump the ability to do every single thing that he is doing right now. When you look at this, though, with birthright citizenship, the goal here is to end naturalization. The goal here is to make it to where if you're born in this country from an immigrant, you are still not a citizen of this country. That's the goal here. Because they're giving Donald Trump wins in terms of allowing him to deport people in this country who have legal status, to revoke the rights of people in this country who have legal status. That's what the Supreme Court is doing here. So what makes us think that them saying, well, we're going to wait a few months for her to decide on birthright citizenship, what makes us think that we should be optimistic about the outcome, given that what they've already done before? A lot to consider. But also the alarm bells are... It's really beyond the alarm bells at this point. I mean, if you're not awake, what are you doing? This is what's happening in our country. The conservative majority, a super conservative majority on the Supreme Court, is helping destroy our democratic republic. It's not new. It's just getting more enhanced, more brazen, more open. The second thing that the Supreme Court decided on today was related to LGBTQ books in schools. The court ruled that schools must let kids opt out of hearing those kinds of books, which empowers parents, as this discriminatory practice has already been taking place across multiple conservative parts of the country. With this ruling, the court allows the country to be excluded from learning material that is in conflict with their religious beliefs. Essentially, this was a 6-3 ruling. Justice Sonia Sotomayor dissented and said that what the Supreme Court did today was actually enabling censorship, calling the decision chaotic. She wrote, quote, "The harm will not be borne by educators alone. Children will suffer too. Classroom disruptions and absences may well inflict long-lasting harm on students' learning and development." The majority closes its eyes to the inevitable chilling effects of its ruling. Many school districts, and particularly the most resource-strapped, cannot afford to engage in costly litigation over opt-out rights to divert resources to tracking and managing student absences. Schools may instead censor their curriculum, stripping material that risk generating religious objections. The court ruling, in effect, thus hands a subset of parents the right to veto curriculum choices long left to locally elected school boards. Because I cannot countenance the court's contortion of our precedent and the untold harms that will follow, I dissent. End quote. So this is Justice Sonia Sotomayor writing about something that we have seen throughout the country with book bans. We have seen book bans all across the country when it comes to just children's books in schools. And so what Justice Sonia Sotomayor points out here is because conservatives for so long have been horrified by the LGBTQ community, the censorship of certain books in schools, when in regard to not just to LGBTQ, but also in regard to race, in regard to information on slavery, that can effectively be just completely restricted now, as we've seen in cases like in the state of Florida. This is censorship. This is censorship. That was the goal here by conservatives, to get this before the Supreme Court, to make a big fuss about it. So that was another thing that was decided today. Also, the court upheld a key provision of the Affordable Care Act, ensuring at least for now that some 150 million people will continue benefiting from it. Think about how horrific it could have been if that went the other way. In a major upset, though, yesterday the court ruled that South Carolina could ban over 1 million people from accessing health care. The ruling allows the state to block Medicaid recipients from getting care at Planned Parenthood. This will now pave the way for restrictions on reproductive rights in other states. It's like, you know, sometimes the stories that I read when I'm preparing for this show, and doing the research, it's like, are we in 2025 or 1925? Or better yet, are we in 1825 or 1725? I mean, sometimes you just have to wonder. It's like one step forward as a country, one step toward progression, 100 steps backward every time, because it's like at the same time that our Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, Mexico grants abortion rights. We're always regressing because, unfortunately, in this country, conservatives, the way that they see it, progression for society writ large, policies that help everyone, progression for conservatives is regression. It doesn't benefit. It's not frugal. And a good point of that is another case that was before the Supreme Court today that they actually did not make a ruling on. Today, the court did not rule on Louisiana's new redistricting map. They're saving that for after the summer. But of course, it's really tick-tock on something like that because of the upcoming local elections and just elections upcoming writ large. I mean, because what this map is going to do is create two black majority congressional districts when Louisiana is 32% black, making black people the second largest racial group in the state after white residents. There are 6 congressional seats in Louisiana. What this new redistricting map would do is dilute the black vote. According to reporting from NPR, in doing this, Republicans are seeking to protect key seats for them while disproportionately affecting black residents in Louisiana from voting. Yeah, we know you are like the second largest racial group in the state of Louisiana, but we're only going to give you 2. Just two congressional spots to vote. Think about that. I mean, consider the people who do not watch the news. Consider the people who have to deal with busy jobs where they don't watch their local news. They don't know of something like this that is transpiring. And they go to vote on election day or before election day, and they have to drive, such and such to go vote now because, black people, you only get 2 congressional seats. I mean, you only get 2 congressional spots to go vote now. 2 districts. And so with a case like this, what is the end goal for Republicans? What do they want to accomplish? Apparently, it is protecting the seats of Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson and Majority Leader Steve Scalise. That's the most important part. Redistricting. That's what we want to do. We want to protect the two most important Republicans in the House while effectively stripping away voting rights from people in this country who deserve it, from people in this country where voting is enshrined in the Constitution of this country. But however, we're still in the year of 2025 where voter suppression is apparently somehow still legal. So we're going to restrict those voting rights by drawing up a new map that favors us because, hey, we really need to hang on to those two Republicans in Congress because, the Supreme Court said, yeah, we're not going to rule on that today. Why not? Why the wait? It's interesting, because 2 years ago, a similar case like this out of Alabama was rejected by the Supreme Court, saying that not only was it racist, but it also was in violation of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And you see the headline there, it says, unexpectedly, the court upheld it. And that really was the case. I mean, you just don't know anymore with this court. It is a conservative majority. When they finally do hear this case, will it be in favor of the black residents and against this map? I mean, we don't know anymore when it comes to the Supreme Court and the diametrically corrupt judges that sit on the conservative majority who benefit from yachts and chilling with billionaires and their wives being associated with Donald Trump. It is extremely depressing and enraging covering the Supreme Court of this country because the lack of ethics. But it's also something in this country that really galvanizes the electorate, that should galvanize the electorate when it comes to the midterms upcoming or when it comes to just your local elections. The Supreme Court is no longer a trusted democratic institution that is going to uphold democratic rights and democratic values. Therefore, it is up to people like you to either run for office or to work to advance initiatives on ballots that are pro-democratic, that are going to do things that the courts are not. That is the only way conceivably, to have some type of resistance to this, to have some type of reprieve from this authoritarian enabling by the highest court in the land. The Supreme Court basically has told us today that the Constitution does not matter, that the president can do whatever he wants, that no right is safe. Because today it's birthright citizenship. Tomorrow it's going to be the First Amendment in terms of, well, you can't criticize the government anymore. The freedom of press can't print or talk about the administration in the way that they used to because the Supreme Court took away those rights too. That's what we're looking at here. A Supreme Court who is willing to do anything and everything for an administration that does not have respect for the rule of law or democracy as a concept. A republic only if we can keep it. It's not looking like we can right now when you have the freaking U.S. Supreme Court saying the president gets to do whatever he wants. Again. That's where we are. The alarms are broken at this point because they have continuously sounded so loud. This is where we are. No right is safe.